Just know when you do us wrong, you might trend. That's it.
I've just had someone feed back on you and say you're very northern. What does that mean?
I was slightly in front of my colleague and he said, "Oi Rosa, get to the back of the bus."
I don't wake up every day thinking about being working class. Do you think posh people wake up thinking every day about being posh?
I suddenly felt very aware of my race. Felt like I was walking around with a label on my head.
Being a mother and being in this industry, you could just laugh, to be honest, because it's like, what's the point?
There are glass ceilings that are piled upon glass ceilings, especially if you're not white straight male.
I'm not pretending to be somebody else anymore just to fit in.
I could draw a very straight line between having spoken up about things and then no longer having a job.
Yes, you can look fine on the outside, and yes, you can look normal, but actually behind the scenes and personally and privately and domestically, you can be struggling.
People would make fun and be nasty about them. In fact, one person said my food smelled like dog food.
There aren't many people like me.
There's not many people like me.
There are not that many people like me.
There's not many people like me.
There aren't many people like me.
There's not enough people like me.
I don't know anybody like me.
There aren't many people like me.
There are not very many people like me.
No, there's not many people like me.
I don't think there's a lot of people like me.
If you can find another 5, I'll give you a tenner.
I was born in Jamaica. In my lifetime, I've walked down the road to collect water. I lived that. When I first came to the UK, I lived in Ipswich in my primary school. Other students felt my skin to see what it felt like. They had never been around a black person before.
I'm Leeds born and bred. I went to a really ordinary comprehensive school. I was the first woman in my family to go to university.
I'm from Cardiff. I'm from a little place called Butte Town, otherwise known as Tiger Bay. I'm mixed race, so my dad is from Jamaica and my mum is Chinese, Bayesian and white. And so I'm ticking all the boxes here.
I grew up in a Catholic family with 6 sisters. I'm the only boy and a very working class, I suppose. My dad was a factory worker.
We grew up in a council estate. Huge amount of racism in those early days. I think we were quite sort of typical of immigrant family, really.
I've always lived in the same area, which is in Chapeltown in Leeds. To me, it was a beautiful place, but to other people, Chapeltown can be seen as gangs, drugs, the ghetto, police.
I was born in Birmingham. I was absolutely adamant in becoming a writer, so I focused all my energy into doing that.
I'm a proud Bradfordian. I'm from Yorkshire. I love being from the north.
I was born here, but we grew up in Kenya. Came back here, I went to school in Bristol.
We grew up in Leeds. It was really nice. I grew up with all my grandparents, my aunties and uncles. We were working class, but I don't think I ever realised we were.
I was growing up in what most people might describe as the most stereotypical media upbringing. I was white, I was male, I grew up in Surrey, I was from the south, I spoke proper. A lot of people are stunned when I say, oh yeah, I'm autistic and I'm gay.
I absolutely adore the fact that it's so creative.
I've always felt really, really lucky to work in the television industry. I've met some of the nicest, most creative, brilliant people.
I like that the industry offers people the opportunity to express themselves.
It allows you a platform to tell stories that are really important that you might not be able to tell otherwise.
You can go from idea to broadcast, and something that you've made will be shown to millions of people.
Oh, how long have you got?
It's very difficult to not look away when you ask that question.
Oh.
You constantly want to be funded, you constantly want to be respected, you constantly want to be working, and all of those 3 things you're usually not, or it feels like that really.
We're still rife with people getting jobs on a nod and a wink, and I think that has such a stifling effect on diversity and equality.
I do feel like the industry expects a specific type of person that I'm not.
What makes me angry is that we're having to have these conversations. Why is representation such an issue for people to understand?
My biggest issue with the TV industry is that it's not inclusive. We're the media. We are meant to represent the country, and as far as I'm concerned, the people making TV really don't match the people who are watching it.
Did you say that if you're black, you have to be, twice as good?
I've always had to work so much harder and always had to be excellent, nothing less than.
I don't want anything extra for me, but I feel like I have to work twice as hard.
You end up having to make sure that you don't make mistakes. You need to work harder, you need to be better than everybody else in there.
Straight away you are seen as this, you're just not white. You have to work 10 times harder.
I don't want to pass down advice to another generation to tell them that they have to work twice as hard to get half as far.
When you're from a working class background and you're starting out in TV, it's quite unforgiving. I thought people could see my poverty.
Having kind of navigated myself for 30 years with the industry, I've got used to the fact that there aren't many working class people in the industry.
It's not always been easy, being very working class, but trying to fit into a very middle class world.
Sometimes I feel really inadequate when I'm in situations because although I'm an intelligent woman, my life experience is different from others. The things that I enjoy are different from others. So if we're having a group conversation and they're talking about really highbrow things that I didn't access as a child, or like networks I didn't access, I find that quite intimidating.
I think I felt a lot of shame about who I was, being working class, coming from a family where, my parents didn't speak English. I think I did pretend to be someone I wasn't for a long time.
You can throw a stone at Broadcasting House and you'd have a hard time meeting somebody working class who, wasn't behind a desk. I do get notes back, wonderfully authentic, and you still live in the north, how marvellous.
It's a competition really for space, for storytelling, and I'm not sure that the working class are winning really.
Everybody said the same thing, which is you will not get work in Yorkshire, because I don't think people consider regional work to be real work.
Just being back in Hull now, you feel it, the poverty of ambition because of where you are. You never really believe you can get out of that factory. You never really believe you can get out of that city.
It's not always easy being regional and northern and having a very northern accent.
I definitely feel like I have received a regional battle and thought to myself, maybe if I just learned a London accent. I feel like I'd be way further along in my career right now if I had a London accent.
It's definitely difficult to get your foot in the door. It's more if you know someone who can get you in.
Especially in this region, I've said before that we're at least 20 years behind. If we don't start working urgently, then it's just going to get worse.
I think mental health has been something that I've struggled with when I'm out of work and when I'm chasing my next contract. That's always been really hard in the sense that if I didn't have that focus, if I didn't have that routine, I'd develop OCD.
It's something I never spoke about. I've never spoke to my colleagues about it. My boss knows because she's always backed me. I just saw it as yet another weakness that was better to hide.
Right now, I am technically a freelancer. It does weigh heavily on you mentally. It's very isolating. You can feel very alone.
It's a pick me situation. It's a please pick me situation in the media industry, and that can be very, very taxing. And of course, it affects your mental health and makes you worry.
Not to feel like you can speak to someone about what's really going on, what you're going through personally is really difficult, but that's what the system is like. It doesn't allow you to be vulnerable.
The biggest challenge for me in my industry, if I'm going to be totally honest, has been being a working mum. That has been by far the biggest challenge.
Family means everything to me. I'm a single mum of 4. I can't build our wealth. I can't do the things other people do, we can't go on holiday, we can't go shopping, just basic things like that.
Being a mother and being in this industry, you could just laugh, to be honest, because it's what's the point? And I know that might sound really negative, but a lot of jobs are full time.
Once you start to have a family and then you try to do that kind of job while juggling childcare and all of that kind of stuff, it's difficult and it is a pressure.
I don't want to be strong. I don't want to be a strong single black mother. I don't want to do that. I want to be very weak and cry.
I worry about being stereotyped all the time. It's always there. I've grown up with it. My personal experience being that oh, this is a black game, so let's get the black guy to talk about it. then you're now forced into a catch-22 situation. You may necessarily want to be truthful about the game because it's harmful and it's got stereotypes in it, but you also know in being truthful about the game that you may be ostracized, you may be pushed aside, you may be put in a situation where it's going to damage your entire career.
I just want to be able to say that a spade is a spade, that the sky is blue if that is indeed the case, as opposed to having to be like, well, will I be seen as an angry black woman? Will I be seen as too sensitive? Do I have to work harder because they might think that because I'm a parent, I'm playing that single parent card?
If you don't extra smile as a black person, somebody might think that you're aggressive. It's the being super duper overly nice just to be seen as regularly nice so that everybody can walk away and say, oh, he was actually nice. Is that why is there an actually there?
I feel like when you work on something and they say, oh, you can't wear your hair like that, it'll attract attention. That's when people are trying to deny your culture a little bit. Like, I get it in some instances. Actually, I don't. I don't understand why I would have to be told not to wear my hair as an afro for a job. That's a bit weird, isn't it?
I remember once I had my hair in single braids, which is what a lot of black women do with their hair. Straight away it was like a massive thing within the office and everyone's trying to touch it and pull it and how do you do it and stuff like that.
Some of the comments I used to get were just awful. Being likened to Medusa, you know, people touching my hair. It wasn't pleasant.
I've been doing some work for an American production company. The American producer came back to me and said, I've just had someone feed back on you and say you're very northern. What does that mean? And I realised that for him, northern was just geographical. Well, I live in the north, but actually what I realised what that other producer meant was probably that I was working class.
I think as I moved up and I, wanted to direct, I felt like being a woman was, a barrier. I could see all the boys around me directing and sort of being told, oh, but we see you more as a producer.
This industry's crying out for female directors. Same old phrase about women just being brilliant producers and organisers, and therefore you're not encouraged as much with the technical side.
I want to be a director. Everyone's telling me you have to be a producer, you have a vagina.
I have never made one, but I have received them. So in my voluntary position as chair of the Writers Guild, I think I was pretty blinkered about the realities of what was going on in the industry. But since I've been involved with the Guild, I've heard some truly appalling stories.
I have never made a formal complaint because I'm too afraid to do anything of the sort.
I did once try and make a formal complaint and I was basically told that I was a liar. So that's as far as it went.
I wouldn't say I've ever made a formal complaint, but I've made my position clear.
I made a formal complaint and it was costly. It did essentially cost me my job. But you don't overtly lose it. Slowly work gets taken away. You're no longer CC'd into emails or invited to meetings, and then suddenly your job performance isn't very good, and in spite of the fact you're like, well, I can't know something you didn't tell me. I could draw a very straight line between having spoken up about things and then no longer having a job.
Any complaint within the industry, I've never seen it work ever, and I've heard of many over the years when people complain about this and that. 18,000 people complained through emails and the right way, and that didn't do nothing. But as soon as something's a trending topic on Twitter, now it's like, yo, we need to do something about this.
The very first time I experienced racism in TV, I was working as a runner in a studios, and we had these trolleys where we would deliver tea and toast to the edits. I was slightly in front of my colleague and he said, "Oi, Rosa, get to the back of the bus." And I was so shocked, I didn't say anything. And another colleague, this little blonde, beautiful white girl, said, "That's racist. You shouldn't say that." And he was like, "Oh, it's only a joke." I told them that this person was racist and he got promoted. So it teaches me that you just don't say anything. That was the first and last time I reported anything to do with race.
Valued by who?
I've at times felt very valued and very secure and very supported.
Sometimes I feel like my voice is valued, I really do. And it's those times that you live for.
I do feel like my word is valued when it's listened to, but I think Getting people to listen is often very hard.
At times I felt disillusioned and unhappy.
But most of the time I don't, most of the time what gives me the strength to carry on is the people I'm filming.
I don't really feel like my voice is valued in this industry, I have to be honest.
I wouldn't say I feel valued by the mainstream media.
I don't believe my voice would necessarily be heard.
Your voice isn't necessarily accepted.
I don't feel valued.
No, I've never felt valued by the industry.
The importance of somebody's voice now is how many people are going to listen to it or watch it. And I think that's the question that television unfortunately asks before it decides whose voice is going to be heard.
I think the most important thing about the whole Black Lives Matter and everybody discussing it, it was important that they did that, because I don't know how anybody else feels, but I felt a real relief that other people were saying it and that I wasn't going mad. It wasn't just me.
With the current climate, you'd think that things have changed. They haven't. They've just changed on the surface for everyone who's looking in. We're doing this for diversity, we're doing that. I'm not seeing it.
It took a man's death, but the message, the voice and the importance of what's going on with us got massively amplified, and I don't think this is the time to be quiet and let the window of opportunity be missed.
Unfortunately, it's taken us too long to get there, of men, of white people, of people of privilege, to understand what constitutes harassment, a discriminatory act, a microaggression, to understand how that makes a workplace unbearable for people and makes a career unpursuable for someone. We are coming to a better understanding. We've still a hell of a long way to go.
The industry's never held accountable for the prejudice and racism that it often gives out.
Diversity schemes are often window dressing, essentially. To be like, look how many brown and black people we've got around. Young ones, we're helping. But they never progress.
I wish diversity schemes didn't exist. I know that makes me a hypocrite because I run one and I'm always championing them to people. But if we had an industry that was already diverse and already thought about the people that they wanted to be in it, then we wouldn't need them.
I started my career 10 years ago and I've seen one black person who's a commissioner. That's a decade and one person to look up to.
I'm the token piece to make you feel like representation is happening, but behind the camera, it's very much not. And I'm just one person, but because I might have a big voice, it might make you feel like it's happening greatly, but it's not. The trick just works wonderfully, and it's definitely something I feel like needs to change.
We've got to the stage where we've admitted there's a problem. I think it has to be understanding that room has to be made, that expecting there to be this weird trickle-up effect where if we get a few runners who are black or working class or have a disability, they will at some point be Director General of the BBC. That's going to take generations.
I did the Assistant Commissioner's scheme. It was brilliant and like such an amazing experience. But it took a long time for me to convince myself to do it, because I thought, well, I'm an exec. I should just be given a commissioning job if they want me. Why should I have to do a scheme? Like, none of my white colleagues have to do a scheme. I'm really experienced.
I think there needs to be better recruitment at the top. I'd like to see black, Asian and disabled commissioning editors across the broadcasters. That could happen tomorrow.
I think it should start down below. I'd like to find ways of training working class people in community centres, try to do work in northern cities, find people with possibilities and have scholarships in place where they can progress.
Paid placements are amazing. Expecting people to work for free all day long just to get into this industry is just not okay.
There should be something else in place for black people, especially considering that the whole of the Ofcom board is white people.
I think unless people are named and shamed, I can't see how this industry is going to change.
If there's going to be a decision or a ruling on whether something is wrong that affects the black community, you need a black board. You need a board of black. If there's going to be something that affects the Asian community, you need a board that has Asian people. An open letter is written by that board that gets shared by every member of the board, whether it's Stormzy, whether it's a John Boyega, whether it's a Idris Elba. Now you're creating a media storm every single time that we've been disrespected to a level.
You have to make it less dog eat dog.
Look at why a lot of us are leaving and try and find out how you can keep us here.
There are a lot of announcements, a lot of schemes, a lot of this and that. But I think the work has to go into just doing it, you know, actually just recruiting people.
It is an industry which is trying to accept the fact that the world is changing.
I think it can change, you need the right people to do it. And it needs to be the people behind the scenes for sure.
It always comes down to who's got the power, and until that changes, it's not going to change.
We need to stop sitting around in rooms and saying, someone should do something, and we need to find the person who's going to do something.
I don't know the way forward. I just know what I won't do is wait.
You know, in 10, 20 years, we'll look back on this year and go, wow, you know, we've achieved a lot since then.
I hope this time in 5 years, 10 years, we don't have to be talking about the next scheme. We're just talking about the next amazing person.
Have the vibe of tomorrow this could change, and that's just how I'm rolling with it.